When Soviet engineers built tractors, they didn't just make farm machines, they built mechanical beasts forged in the same factories as tanks. Designed to survive Siberian winters, drag plows through stone-hard soil, and pull loads that would break most machines, these tractors became legends. Tough, overbuilt, and brutally reliable, they earned a reputation as being stronger than tanks. Number 1. Kirovets K-700. When the Kirovets K-700 rolled out of the Kirov plant in Leningrad in 1962, it looked less like a farm tractor and more like a military vehicle. With its articulated body, massive 4x4 wheels, and oversized diesel engine, it was designed to tackle the vast fields of the Soviet Union, especially the newly cultivated lands of Siberia and Kazakhstan. Powered by a Yamza V8 diesel delivering around 215 horsepower, the K-700 could handle tasks previously impossible for smaller tractors. Its enormous size, over 11 tons, and articulated steering made it capable of pulling gigantic plows, working on construction projects, or hauling heavy trailers across terrain where ordinary tractors would sink. Farmers often joked that if you couldn't get a tank to pull a load, you could always call in a K-700. Its mechanical simplicity was part of its charm. Basic components, oversized bearings, and heavy-duty steel construction meant that it could withstand decades of abuse without major failure. Anecdotes from Siberia tell of K-700s left out in -40-degree winters buried in snow, yet still able to fire up in spring with minimal coaxing. The tractor's resilience and power gave it an almost mythical reputation, and many are still in use today over 50 years after they were first produced. Compared to tanks of its era, the K-700 lacked armor, but in terms of ruggedness and reliability, it often outlasted them in harsh conditions. For Soviet collective farms, the K-700 became a symbol of strength and productivity, a machine that was as much a cultural icon as it was a practical workhorse. Number 2. Kirovets K-701. The Kirovets K-701 was the natural successor to the K-700, and when it debuted in 1975, it set new standards for heavy-duty agricultural tractors. Built in the same Leningrad plant, the K-701 was larger, stronger, and more powerful than its predecessor. This beast of a tractor featured a V12 diesel engine producing about 300 horsepower, an enormous amount of power for a farm machine at the time. Weighing over 12 tons, the K-701 was designed for the most demanding tasks: deep plowing, pulling multi-furrow plows, and transporting massive loads over unforgiving terrain. Its 16-speed gearbox and articulated frame allowed smooth maneuverability despite its bulk, while its enormous wheels ensured excellent traction even in muddy or snowy conditions. Farmers and operators praised the K-701 for its sheer durability. Stories abound of these machines working for 10,000 hours without significant overhauls, something unthinkable in many Western tractors of the same era. In Siberia, it was not unusual to see a K-701 dragging stuck trucks, buses, or even immobilized military vehicles out of snowdrifts. The fact that this tractor designed for farming could perform recovery tasks that challenged actual armored tanks speaks volumes about its strength. One famous anecdote describes a K-701 pulling a derailed train wagon back onto the tracks, a feat highlighting both its torque and rugged construction. Though it lacked modern comfort or sophisticated electronics, the K-701's simplicity was its strength. It could be repaired with basic tools and spare parts found in any workshop. Farmers often said the K-701 was not just a tractor but a tank with tires, built to survive anything the Soviet climate and soil could throw at it. Number 3. Stalinets S-65. The Stalinets S-65 was one of the first truly heavy-tracked tractors built in the Soviet Union, and its impact was felt not just in agriculture, but on the battlefield. Produced at the Chelyabinsk tractor plant from 1937, the S-65 weighed around 11 tons and was powered by a massive 13.5-liter diesel engine, delivering 65 horsepower. On paper, the horsepower seems modest, but the real strength of the S-65 was in its weight and traction. It was designed as a multi-purpose tractor, but quickly found use hauling artillery pieces and even immobilized tanks during World War II. The Red Army adopted it in large numbers, with over 37,000 produced before 1941. On the battlefield, the S-65 proved invaluable. Its wide tracks and simple construction allowed it to crawl across mud, snow, and bomb-cratered terrain where wheeled trucks would fail. Veterans recall how these tractors, slow as they were with a top speed of just 7 km/h, could reliably tow guns and vehicles in conditions that stopped everything else. In Siberia and the far north, their reliability was unmatched. They could be started with basic heating techniques when temperatures dropped to -40 degrees, while tanks and trucks often froze solid. Farmers later used surplus S-65s for heavy plowing and logging, finding them nearly indestructible despite wartime scars. Compared to tanks of the same period, the S-65's endurance and utility often surpassed them. After all, when tanks bogged down, it was often an S-65 that came to the rescue. Its reputation as a tractor stronger than a tank wasn't mere propaganda. It was a lived reality for both soldiers and farmers who relied on its unyielding toughness. Number 4. Chelyabinsk T-250. The Chelyabinsk T-250 was a tractor that truly blurred the line between civilian machinery and military engineering. Introduced in 1961, it was the world's first diesel-electric crawler tractor, built at the Chelyabinsk tractor plant, CHEAT, also known as Tankograd because of its World War II tank production. This connection was no accident. The T-250's engine was directly based on a V2 tank diesel. Under its massive hood sat a V12 engine producing 323 horsepower, but instead of powering a conventional transmission, it drove an electric generator that in turn powered traction motors in the tracks. This system, inspired by locomotives, gave the tractor smooth, high-torque delivery and eliminated many of the mechanical weak points common in gear-driven tractors. Weighing 32 tons, the T-250 was essentially a moving fortress of steel, and its massive crawler tracks gave it incredibly low ground pressure, allowing it to glide over snow, marsh, and permafrost, where wheeled vehicles and even tanks would bog down. The T-250's design made it indispensable in the USSR's northern mining operations, where machines had to function in extreme cold, ice, and mud. Operators told stories of the T-250 starting up in Siberian winters when the mercury dropped below 50 degrees, a feat few other machines could manage. Its rugged cooling system, air filtration, and simple electric drive meant less mechanical wear and longer service life. In fact, some units logged over 20,000 hours before major overhauls. Anecdotes abound of T-250s performing miracles, pulling derailed train cars back onto tracks, dragging stuck locomotives out of frozen swamps, or working continuously for weeks in remote mines without failure. Compared to tanks, which were prone to breakdowns in non-combat use, the T-250's reliability was legendary. Its brute pulling power and resilience earned it nicknames like the Iron Elephant among workers. To this day, it remains a shining example of Soviet over-engineering. So strong it was often said to be a tractor disguised as a tank, and in many respects tougher than the tanks whose technology it borrowed. Number 5. Belarus MTZ-50. The Belarus MTZ-50 and its four-wheel drive sibling, the MTZ-52, were among the most iconic tractors ever built in the Soviet Union. Produced at the Minsk Tractor Works starting in 1961, these machines were not the heaviest or most powerful, but they became symbols of Soviet engineering because of their unstoppable reliability and versatility. Weighing around 3.5 tons and powered by a 55-horsepower diesel engine, the MTZ-50 looked modest on paper, yet it was built to withstand the brutal realities of Soviet farming, mud, snow, frozen ground, and endless working hours with little maintenance. The MTZ-50's strength was in its design philosophy. Unlike massive articulated giants like the Kirovets, this was a tractor for everyday use designed to be simple, affordable, and nearly indestructible. Farmers across the USSR praised its ability to start in sub-zero winters, run all day on minimal fuel, and keep working for decades. The MTZ-52 with four-wheel drive added even greater versatility, giving it tank-like traction in fields, forests, and construction sites. Many were also exported. Over 1 million units went to Eastern Europe, Asia, and even Africa, where they proved just as reliable in scorching deserts as they were in Siberian blizzards. Stories from rural collective farms describe MTZ tractors pulling wagons overloaded with grain, hauling logs out of bogs, and even towing broken trucks and buses back to the road. Mechanics loved them because any repair could be done with simple tools, and spare parts were easy to find. In many cases, an MTZ-50 could remain in service for 30 to 40 years with only occasional overhauls. Operators often joked that these tractors were mini-tanks, not because of their size, but because of their ability to survive punishment that would destroy lesser machines. Even today, thousands of MTZ-50s and MTZ-52s are still running, a living reminder that toughness doesn't always come from brute size, it comes from clever, durable engineering. In the end, the Belarus MTZ-50-52 proved that strength isn't only about horsepower or weight. Sometimes, true toughness lies in the ability to endure season after season, year after year, without giving up, a quality that made these tractors every bit as legendary as the Soviet tanks they often outlasted. Number 6. T-150. The T-150 was one of the most successful heavy-duty tractors to come out of the Kharkiv tractor plant in Ukraine during the Soviet era. Introduced in 1973, it became a workhorse for collective farms across the USSR. Unlike the massive articulated Kirovets, the T-150 was a tracked tractor designed for versatility and reliability. It weighed about 8 tons and was powered by a 180 horsepower diesel engine, giving it an excellent balance of power and efficiency. With its rugged steel frame, wide tracks, and reliable 9-speed gearbox, the T-150 excelled at plowing, harrowing, and other heavy field work. Its design drew heavily from Soviet military engineering, and its resemblance to a tank was no coincidence. The Kharkiv factory also produced armored vehicles, and many of the same production techniques were applied to tractors. What truly set the T-150 apart was its ability to endure extreme climates. Farmers in Siberia recall how the T-150 would start and run reliably even in 40-degree winters, thanks to preheating systems and its heavily insulated engine compartment. It could slog through deep mud, snow, and uneven ground where wheeled tractors had no chance. Forestry workers loved it for its ability to haul logs out of swampy terrain, while miners valued it for its pulling strength in construction and excavation tasks. Stories circulated of T-150s towing multiple trailers laden with 30 tons of grain or timber, feats that would cripple lighter tractors. Operators also admired its simplicity. With basic tools, a farmer could repair almost any part in the field. Unlike modern tractors packed with electronics, the T-150 was straightforward and nearly indestructible. Its tank-like resilience earned it a reputation as one of the most dependable tractors ever built in the USSR. Compared to tanks, it may not have had armor, but in terms of surviving years of punishing labor, harsh weather, and minimal maintenance, the T-150 was stronger in every practical sense. It was a true Soviet workhorse, built not just to last a season, but a lifetime. Number 7. Chelyabinsk T-800. When it comes to sheer size and power, few tractors in history can compare to the Chelyabinsk T-800. Introduced in the early 1980s, this colossal machine was built at the Chelyabinsk tractor plant, ChatZ, a facility famous for producing Soviet tanks during World War II. The T-800 was developed for the most extreme earth-moving and mining operations, and it quickly earned a reputation as one of the largest and strongest tractors ever built. Weighing an astonishing 103 tons, the T-800 dwarfed nearly every other civilian vehicle of its time. At its heart was a massive 43.6-liter six-cylinder diesel engine producing over 820 horsepower, delivering incredible torque to its enormous crawler tracks. This allowed the tractor to move mountains, literally by pushing or ripping apart frozen soil, rock, and permafrost that defeated even modern bulldozers. The T-800's capabilities were nothing short of legendary. Operators recounted how it could rip through unblasted rock, clear frozen tundra in Siberia, and cut roadbeds through solid earth without slowing down. Its drawbar pull of up to 140 tons meant it could move entire sections of earth that normally required explosives or multiple smaller machines. Despite its immense size, the T-800 was surprisingly maneuverable thanks to its hydromechanical transmission and advanced steering system. Engineers had essentially taken tank technology and scaled it up for civilian purposes, creating a tractor that was more powerful than many military armored vehicles. Only 10 units were built due to its enormous cost and specialized purpose, but each one became a legend in the regions where it worked. Workers often joked that the T-800 wasn't just a tractor, it was a tank on steroids, capable of crushing anything in its path. Compared to actual tanks, it lacked armor or weaponry. But in terms of raw pulling power and ability to endure constant heavy use in brutal conditions, the T-800 easily outclassed them. It remains one of the greatest examples of Soviet over-engineering, a machine that embodied the idea of being stronger than tanks in every sense. Number 8. Kharkov DT-75. If the T-800 was the giant of Soviet tractors, the DT-75 was its opposite. a modest, medium-sized crawler that became the most widely produced tractor in Soviet history. Built at the Kharkiv tractor plant from 1963 onwards, the DT-75 was designed to be the people's tractor, a machine that could work anywhere in any conditions and be affordable enough for collective farms across the USSR. Over 2.7 million units were eventually produced, making it not only the most common Soviet tractor, but also one of the most numerous track tractors ever built worldwide. With a weight of around 6.5 tons and powered by a simple four-cylinder diesel producing between 65 and 90 horsepower, the DT-75 didn't impress on paper. Its true strength lay in its durability, simplicity, and adaptability. The DT-75 was used for everything: plowing fields, pulling wagons, clearing snow, logging, and even serving as a base for specialized machinery like bulldozers and excavators. Farmers loved it because it was nearly indestructible. Stories abound of DT-75s left outside in sub-zero winters for months, only to start up again with a hand crank. Its wide steel tracks gave it excellent traction in mud and snow, and its simple gearbox and mechanical systems meant any village mechanic could repair it with basic tools. Spare parts were plentiful, and many tractors stayed in operation for decades with only minimal maintenance. In Siberia, it became legendary for its ability to keep working when trucks, cars, and even military vehicles froze solid. Operators joked that a DT-75 was the machine you could trust to still be running after the apocalypse. Compared to tanks, it lacked speed, but its reliability in extreme conditions often made it more valuable than armored vehicles. Even today, thousands of DT-75s are still in use across Russia, Central Asia, and beyond, a testament to the enduring strength of this humble Soviet workhorse. It was proof that sometimes strength is not about raw power, but about the ability to endure, an area where the DT-75 consistently proved itself stronger than tanks. Number 9. CT-SD-5 Stalinets. The STZ-5 was one of the most important tractors of the pre-war Soviet Union. Built at the Stalingrad tractor plant between 1937 and 1942, weighing just under 4 tons and equipped with a modest 52 horsepower gasoline engine, it might not seem impressive compared to later giants like the Kirovets or T-800. But the STZ-5's strength wasn't in raw horsepower, it was in its design, ruggedness, and wartime service. Built as a multi-purpose track tractor, it was used in agriculture to plow fields and haul loads, but its real fame came during World War II when it was pressed into service as an artillery tractor. Over 9,000 were built, making it the most common Soviet prime mover of the early war. The STZ-5 could tow medium artillery pieces including 45mm and 76mm guns across mud, snow, and broken terrain that stopped trucks cold. Its wide tracks and low ground pressure gave it excellent mobility, and its simple design meant it could be repaired quickly in the field. Soldiers relied on it to keep artillery moving during desperate defensive battles, and many units credited the STZ-5 with saving their guns when retreating from advancing German forces. German reports frequently noted captured STZ-5s being repurposed for their own artillery, an acknowledgement of their effectiveness. Beyond the war, surplus STZ-5s were used in agriculture and logging, where they proved equally valuable. Farmers recalled how these tractors could keep working in the worst mud or frozen ground, surviving conditions that broke lighter machines. Compared to tanks, the STZ-5 was unarmored and slow, but in terms of reliability and usefulness, it often did more to influence battles than some armored vehicles. Its legacy is that of a small but mighty machine, built with the same toughness as a tank but applied to farming and logistics. In many ways, it was the unsung hero of Soviet industry and warfare, a tractor that proved that strength isn't always about size, it's about resilience. Number 10. Chelyabinsk B-10M. The B-10M was one of the toughest bulldozer tractors to come out of the Chelyabinsk tractor plant in the late 1960s. Based on the proven T-130 and T-170 crawler platforms, the B-10M was a 15-ton beast powered by an 180 horsepower YMZ diesel engine. It was designed primarily as a bulldozer for earth-moving, forestry, and construction, but its versatility made it a favorite across the USSR. Unlike many tractors of the era, the B-10M was specifically engineered to work in the harshest environments, from the deserts of Central Asia to the frozen tundra of Siberia. Its heavy-duty frame, powerful hydraulic rams, and massive semi-spherical blade gave it the ability to rip through frozen ground, uproot massive tree stumps, and move boulders that would halt smaller machines. Operators who worked with the B-10M praised its toughness. It could run in temperatures ranging from +40° to -50° without major issues, thanks to its robust cooling system and rugged steel construction. In forestry, it was used to clear massive tracts of land, often plowing through terrain so boggy that wheeled vehicles and even tanks would get stuck. In construction, it built roads, canals, and foundations across the Soviet Union's most inhospitable regions. Farmers and engineers often compared it to a tank, not because it looked like one, but because it shared the same philosophy: simple, overbuilt, and able to survive constant punishment. Stories circulated of B-10Ms running day and night for weeks without stopping, only pausing for refueling and routine checks. Compared to tanks, it lacked armor and speed, but it was far more efficient at tackling the kind of hard labor that even tanks weren't designed for. The B-10M's legacy lives on in modern Russian bulldozers, many of which still trace their design lineage back to this iconic machine. It stands as a final example of the Soviet obsession with building machines not just to work, but to endure, and in that respect it was truly stronger than tanks. Soviet tractors weren't pretty or comfortable, but they were unstoppable. From the mighty Kirovets giants to the humble DT-75, these machines proved that strength isn't about armor or weapons, it's about endurance. Decades later, many are still running, a reminder that the toughest machines sometimes come not from the battlefield but from the farm.